In the wake of recent geopolitical tensions and economic shifts, today's top stories reveal a world in flux. From conflicts to market downturns, we cover the critical events that shape our lives. Here are today's top 10 stories you need to know. Eastern Africa has been grappling with unprecedented flooding, causing widespread damage and displacement. The region has experienced heavy rainfall over the past week, leading to rivers overflowing their banks. Thousands of homes have been destroyed, and critical infrastructure has been severely impacted. The flooding has disrupted transportation and access to essential services in countries like Kenya and Uganda. Humanitarian organizations are mobilizing resources to assist affected communities. The local governments are assessing damage and coordinating relief efforts. Experts warn that climate change is likely exacerbating these extreme weather events. As the situation develops, the need for international aid becomes increasingly urgent. Communities are calling for better disaster preparedness and response strategies to mitigate future risks. China's economic slowdown is deepening, raising concerns among global investors. Recent data indicates that manufacturing activity has contracted for the third consecutive month, reflecting weakness in domestic demand. Analysts attribute this decline to ongoing trade tensions and strict COVID-19 restrictions that are still affecting supply chains. The Chinese government is under pressure to implement stimulus measures to revive growth. While some sectors, such as technology, show resilience, overall consumer confidence remains low. The implications of this slowdown are significant for global markets, as China is a key driver of economic activity worldwide. Investors are closely watching for policy changes that could signal a shift in China's economic strategy. As the situation unfolds, the potential for increased volatility in global markets looms large. Tensions in the Middle East have escalated following a series of military skirmishes along the Israel-Lebanon border. Recent exchanges of fire have resulted in casualties on both sides, prompting urgent international calls for restraint. This conflict is rooted in long-standing territorial disputes and political instability, exacerbated by shifting alliances in the region. Historical grievances, particularly regarding land and sovereignty, have fueled animosities that date back decades. The United Nations has urged both parties to engage in dialogue to prevent further escalation, emphasizing the need for diplomatic solutions. Regional powers, including Iran and Saudi Arabia, are closely monitoring the situation, as any prolonged conflict could destabilize Lebanon and Israel, leading to wider regional unrest. The impact on civilian populations is already severe, with reports of displaced families and heightened security concerns. As diplomatic efforts intensify, leaders must prioritize negotiations to avoid a broader conflict that could engulf the entire region. Global oil prices have surged sharply, with Brent crude reaching a 3-month high amid escalating geopolitical tensions and significant production cuts by major oil-producing nations. This surge is largely attributed to fears of supply disruptions in the Middle East, a region already fraught with instability, compounded by ongoing sanctions against key oil exporters like Iran and Venezuela. As oil prices climb, the repercussions for the global economy are becoming increasingly pronounced. The transportation and manufacturing sectors, heavily reliant on affordable oil, are likely to see their operational costs rise substantially, which could inevitably lead to higher consumer prices across various goods. Economists caution that if these elevated oil prices persist, they could hinder economic recovery efforts in countries still grappling with the aftereffects of the pandemic. Moving forward, market analysts are closely monitoring developments for signs of stabilization in oil supply and potential policy responses from major economies aimed at mitigating the economic fallout. Inflation rates in the United States have surged to alarming new highs, raising significant concerns among economists and policymakers alike. The latest Consumer Price Index report reveals a staggering year-over-year increase of 8.5%, marking the highest level in over 4 decades. This sharp rise is largely attributed to escalating energy costs, exacerbated by ongoing supply chain disruptions that have plagued various sectors. As families grapple with rising prices for essential goods, the Federal Reserve finds itself under increasing pressure to implement tighter monetary policies, which may include aggressive interest rate hikes. The implications for consumer spending are profound, as higher inflation can erode purchasing power and dampen economic growth. Analysts are closely watching the Fed's upcoming decisions, as these will play a pivotal role in determining the economic trajectory. With inflation remaining a critical challenge, the focus is shifting to how effectively policymakers can stabilize prices while fostering recovery. Future actions by the Fed will be decisive in shaping the economic landscape. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine has intensified dramatically, with new military offensives reported in eastern Ukraine, particularly in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Russian forces have ramped up their operations, leading to significant civilian casualties and displacement, exacerbating an already dire humanitarian crisis. The international community has condemned these aggressive actions, with renewed calls for sanctions against Russia echoing from various world leaders and organizations. Humanitarian aid organizations are struggling to provide critical support to affected regions as the ongoing violence hampers their efforts. The situation is grim, with infrastructure suffering extensive damage and essential services, such as water and electricity, severely disrupted. As diplomatic efforts for peace talks falter, the potential for further escalation remains alarmingly high. Analysts are closely monitoring shifts in international response, particularly from NATO and the European Union, as they consider new strategies. In the coming weeks, the urgency for a cohesive global response will be paramount to mitigate the escalating human cost and restore stability in the region. Tech stocks are experiencing a major sell-off as investors react to rising interest rates and inflation concerns. This downturn is particularly pronounced among high-growth companies in the technology sector, where elevated valuations are now under scrutiny. The Nasdaq Composite has fallen sharply, signaling a broader market correction that many analysts see as a necessary recalibration. Analysts attribute this downturn to fears that higher borrowing costs will impact future growth prospects, making it more challenging for tech firms to finance expansion. Companies like Apple and Amazon, once seen as safe havens, are now facing increased pressure. The implications for the tech industry are significant. Reliance on low interest rates for expansion is now a vulnerability. As the market adjusts, investors are reassessing their portfolios, with many shifting toward defensive sectors like utilities and consumer staples. This sell-off raises questions about the sustainability of tech-led market gains. Looking ahead, tech firms may need to adapt quickly, enhancing their earnings strategies to regain investor confidence and stabilize their market positions. The European Union is facing significant economic challenges as inflation and energy prices continue to rise, posing a threat to its recovery. Recent reports indicate that energy costs have surged due to supply chain disruptions exacerbated by geopolitical tensions, particularly the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe. These factors have led to increased costs for consumers and businesses alike, resulting in a noticeable decline in consumer spending. The EU is grappling with the implications of high inflation, which could stifle overall economic growth and push many households towards financial insecurity. Policymakers are urgently considering measures to alleviate the financial burden, such as targeted subsidies and energy price caps, but the effectiveness of these measures remains uncertain. The impact of these economic challenges is being felt unevenly across member states, with countries like Germany and Italy experiencing more severe repercussions than others. As EU leaders convene to discuss potential solutions, the future of the bloc's economic stability hangs in the balance. In the coming weeks, decisive actions will be critical as the EU seeks to restore confidence and promote sustainable growth amidst these turbulent times. The U.S. Congress has passed a landmark climate bill aimed at reducing carbon emissions and promoting renewable energy. This legislation represents a pivotal moment in the ongoing struggle against climate change, positioning the United States as a potential leader in global environmental policy. The bill encompasses a comprehensive range of provisions, including substantial investments in clean energy technologies and incentives designed to motivate both businesses and individuals to reduce their carbon footprints. Environmental organizations have lauded the bill, viewing it as an essential response to increasingly severe climate challenges and natural disasters. The economic implications are substantial, with projections indicating the creation of millions of jobs within the renewable energy sector, which could help revitalize struggling communities. As states begin to implement these changes, they will need to adapt their policies to align with federal goals, ensuring a cohesive approach to climate action. The success of this initiative will depend on sustained bipartisan support and robust enforcement mechanisms to ensure compliance. As the U.S. embarks on this ambitious path towards sustainability, it sets a precedent for other nations, potentially influencing global climate agreements and fostering international collaboration on environmental issues. The future of this initiative will be closely monitored as it unfolds. The global food crisis has worsened significantly, largely due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Known as the breadbasket of Europe, Ukraine has seen agricultural production severely disrupted by military actions, with fields left fallow and supply chains crippled. This war has led to significant reductions in grain exports, which are critical for food supplies worldwide. Countries that are heavily reliant on Ukrainian grain, particularly in Africa and the Middle East, are now facing dire shortages, leading to increased malnutrition rates. Prices for essential commodities are skyrocketing, exacerbating an already critical situation for millions. Humanitarian organizations are warning of potential famine in affected regions if the conflict does not de-escalate. As nations scramble to secure alternative food sources, diplomatic efforts are intensifying to negotiate safe passage for agricultural shipments from Ukraine's ports. The ramifications of this crisis extend beyond immediate hunger, as food insecurity could lead to political instability in vulnerable nations, potentially triggering unrest and conflict. The ongoing situation highlights the fragility of global food systems and the interconnectedness of geopolitical events. Addressing this global challenge will require coordinated action on an unprecedented scale, involving international partnerships and innovative solutions. As the conflict continues, stakeholders must work diligently to ensure food security and stability for the most affected populations, paving the way for recovery and resilience in the future. Thank you for tuning in to our coverage of today's top news stories. Which of these events shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates.